Does Britain have a problem with Saudi funding for so-called extremist groups? A new report concludes it does. Hardly a new accusation, but in the current context, it's making headlines. The Henry Jackson Society, a right-wing think tank, argues that countries across the Gulf region, including Iran and Qatar, have been guilty of advancing so-called extremism. But in terms of funding, Saudi Arabia is clearly the largest source. The report says in the UK this funding has primarily taken the form of endowments to mosques and Islamic educational institutions, which have in turn played host to extremist preachers and the distribution of extremist literature. Influence has also been exerted through the training of British Muslim religious leaders in Saudi Arabia, as well as the use of Saudi textbooks in a number of the UK's independent Islamic schools.
The government position has moved to one that says that non-violent extremism does play a crucial role in potentially then individuals moving into violent extremism, and certainly it's much easier for people trying to recruit for terrorism if they have a pool of people who have been made to feel hostile to the West, Western values.
But despite a series of deadly attacks in British cities, the report does admit, quote, it is rarely the case that a definitive connection can be established between foreign funding and individuals being recruited into terrorism. And some experts say the approach is misguided.
The whole idea here behind this report is that Saudi Arabia needs to be dealt with because it's spreading ideologies and ideas that is leading to terrorism. But on what empirical evidential basis is such a claim being made?
We also need to look at that transparency not being focused particularly on Muslim charities. We need to look at how the Saudi establishment is channeling money and funneling money into British establishment areas where they're influencing the media in terms of what it says.
Just this week, Prime Minister Theresa May, seen here on a recent visit to Saudi Arabia to boost trade ties, was again accused of suppressing a report into foreign funding for extremism. The Home Office study, which began in 2016, was reportedly finished half a year ago, and now Downing Street says ministers are still deciding what can be published. This latest report and the demands for the Home Office investigation to be published really don't help Prime Minister Theresa May. Her government stands accused of prioritising trade links with Saudi Arabia over fighting extremism. And although they say they are acting, the calls for clarity are getting louder. Nadim, Al Jazeera, London.